So here, this is with regards to the digestive system, Part A, PowerPoints. So with regards to this, why does it matter that you need to know about the digestive system? Well, it's important for you to properly assess patients with certain disorders such as acid reflux disease or GERDS, gastroesophageal reflux disease, which essentially is heartburn. So, main functions of the digestive system. Well, we ingest food, which are complex structures, and then we break it down into nutrient molecules, so that's a catabolic process. And once we break it down into simpler compounds, they are then absorbed in a molecular form into the bloodstream and in the lymphatics. And whatever is left over that was indigestible and was not able to be absorbed, it is eliminated in the body in the form of feces. So, organs of the digestive tract, two groups, the alimentary canal and the accessory digestive organs. So, alimentary canal is basically this continuous muscular tube that runs from the mouth to the anus. This is where we ingest, digest foods, break down into smaller fragments, absorb these simpler compounds through the lining and of the gut, and then following into the bloodstream or lymphatics. So the organs are the mouth, the pharynx, the esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, and anus. The accessory digestive organs, well, those are your teeth, tongue, gallbladder, and then we have digestive glands, which produce secretions that help break down the foods that we eat. And those start at the salivary glands, the liver, which produces the bile salts, or we call it bile acids, and the pancreas, which also produces digestive enzymes as well as the bicarbonate. So here's this gross anatomy showing you the digestive tract as well as the accessory organs associated with this system. So, digestive process. Well, it starts in the oral cavity. So processing of food involves 6 essential activities. First one is ingestion, in other words, eating. Propulsion, which is the movement of food through the alimentary canal, which includes swallowing, and peristalsis, which is the major means of propelling the food bolus that involves alternating waves of contraction and relaxation of this muscular tube to enable this food bolus to go normally in one direction. There are 2 types of movement and so forth. The first one is peristalsis, as I said before. This one here, it is propelling the food in one direction. There may be a little bit of mixing, but predominantly it is just moving the content along the alimentary canal. Segmentation, on the other hand, this one here is this pattern of contractions and relaxations to basically mix and churn the contents of the food to enable it to break it down into smaller pieces, and in aiding in the physical breakdown of the contents. The smaller the particle size, the greater its surface area relative to its size. So, the process of digestion, well, these are the processes here. Mechanical breakdown, that includes chewing, which is called mastication, where you're mixing the food with the saliva, churning the food, breaking it into smaller pieces, and along with segmentation, which is the local constriction of the intestine that mixes the food, churns it, and mixes it well with the digestive juices in the lumen of the alimentary canal. Digestion is basically a series of catabolic steps, catabolic chomping away, breaking complex food molecules into simple chemical building blocks. And once you get that to that point, then you have the passageway for absorption of the digestive fragments from the lumen of the GI to the blood or lymph. And we'll talk more about the lymphatics play a role in absorption of fat. And of course, the last is defecation, which is the elimination of the indigestible substances via the anus in the form of feces. So here, this image shows you the processes here in the beginning. Ingestion. Here we have the mechanical breakdown of the foodstuff, mastications, chewing, then in the pharynx, and then once we get down into the esophagus here, the upper 1/3 of the esophagus is formed by skeletal muscle, so that's voluntary control. The lower 2/3 of the esophagus is formed by smooth muscle, in which the propulsion of the food bolus is due to peristaltic contractions that enables the food to be brought down into the stomach. Once it's in the stomach, further churning, mixing, breaking down of the food content is further, and then continues where digestion is continuing here into the duodenum and then the small intestine. And then in the case of the small intestine, we have absorption, digestion and absorption here. Absorption of nutrients via the blood vessels, which is part of the hepatoportal circulation, where this nutrient-rich blood supply, the venous, ends up going to the portal vein, which then goes to the liver for processing, and then from the liver, it is then this blood goes into the systemic circulation via hepatic veins directly into the inferior vena cava. The fat, which is in the form of chylomicrons, those are simply too large to be absorbed by the blood vessels, and they are picked up by the lymph vessels, these lacteals, found in the small intestine, and it is transported via the lymphatics and eventually dumped into the circulatory system. Continuing the large intestine here, there's going to be namely reabsorption of water and electrolytes here, and then finally the feces. Once water is removed from this, the watery stool becomes more formed in the form of feces, and it is stored in the rectum, and then finally from the rectum and anus defecation occurs. So the organization of the digestive system in relation to the peritoneum. So the peritoneum is one of the three serous membranes in this case, it is found in the abdominal pelvic cavity. And there are two parts of this serous membrane. The visceral peritoneum, which is the membrane on the external surface of most of the GI organs. And we have the parietal peritoneum, which is the membrane that lines the body wall of the abdominal pelvic cavity. And in between the visceral and parietal peritoneum, we have the peritoneal cavity, which is a fluid-filled space between the two membranes, and the fluid lubricates the mobile organs so that you don't have any adhesions or frictional rub between the different adjacent structures. The mesentery. Well, the mesentery is a double layer of the peritoneum, and the layers are fused back to back and extends from the body wall to the digestive organs. And these provides the route and support for blood vessels, lymphatics, and nerves to the respective portion of the alimentary canal and accessory organs. And it holds the organs in place and also stores fat. The intraperitoneal or peritoneal organs are the organs that are located within the peritoneum. Retroperitoneal organs, these are located outside or posterior to the peritoneum. That includes most of the pancreas, duodenum, and parts of the large intestine. So here, this shows you a visualization here. In the superior image here, it's showing you the dorsal or posterior mesentery here, where it surrounds the visceral organ here in this case. So this is called the visceral peritoneum on the surface of the organ itself, and then this would be the parietal peritoneum that's lining the outer wall of the peritoneal cavity. The dorsal mesentery, and then finally we have the ventral mesentery. Here, some intraperitoneal digestive organs are also suspended from the body wall in the anterior wall. The site of lost or reabsorbed mesentery. In this case, these are some organs that are retroperitoneal because they have lost their mesentery during development. And as I stated earlier, that would be the pancreas, portions of the duodenum, and parts of the large intestine. So, some pathology here in terms of clinical application. Peritonitis is essentially inflammation of the peritoneum, and it can be caused by piercing an abdominal wound, perforating ulcer, or ruptured appendix here, or the perforating ulcer of the colon, for example. Normally inside the peritoneal cavity it is sterile. However, inside the colon and appendix it is not sterile. It is loaded with normal flora, which helps with digestion and synthesizing some vitamin B complexes and vitamin K. And if we get that bacteria in the peritoneal cavity, that causes an acute inflammation and infection of the peritoneum called the peritonitis. This, if not treated, can be dangerous and lethal if it becomes widespread and not treated. In order to treat, we would have to remove the debris by peritoneal lavage and megadoses of antibiotics, because you literally opened up, you compromised a sterile field with bacteria that was found in the gut. Histology. All digestive organs have the same 4 basic layers or tunics. It is from the luminal side to the most superficial is the mucosa, the submucosa, the muscularis externa, and the serosa. So histology of the alimentary canal. So the epithelium essentially is simple columnar epithelium and mucus secreting cells in most of the tract. In other words, with the exception of the mouth, the esophagus, and the anus, which is made up of stratified squamous epithelium, the rest of it is by simple columnar epithelium, in which you have goblet cells that secrete mucus, which protects the digestive organs from enzymes and eases the food passage. And also some of them, like in the stomach and small intestine, may secrete enzymes and hormones. So the blood supply, in other words, the splanchnic circulation. Splanchnology is the study of the visceral organs of the digestive tract. So the arteries that branch off the aorta to serve digestive organs. So the celiac trunk, it branches off to the hepatic artery, the splenic artery, and the left gastric arteries, followed by the superior mesenteric artery and then the inferior mesenteric artery. The next is the hepatic portal circulation. This drains nutrient-rich blood from the digestive organs and delivers the blood to the liver for processing by way of the hepatic portal circulation. So all of the veins, the venous return that's nutrient-rich, all converge to form the portal vein, which goes directly into the liver for processing. So with regards to stimulating the digestive tract, first of all, you have to know the autonomic nervous system is responsible for involuntary activity in the body, namely with respect to the digestive tract. The parasympathetic nervous system stimulates GI activity. The sympathetic suppresses GI activity. So that's one with regards to the autonomic nervous system in terms of that. We also have external stimuli that can actually elicit in a response for increase in GI activity. The first one is sight, smell, taste, and thought of food. So these things, if you see or smell or taste or think of food, that will also induce and stimulate activity.